It's the Scotch Test Dummies, and I'm coming to you with one of my typical blind quick hitters. Samples come in, they sit on my shelf, I grab randomly, try them. Don't know what it is. And since this is December, getting close to Christmas, I'm also going to do my 2020 kind of story wrap-up, where I usually think of things or whatever. Now, we will get to the tasting, but as I do it, this particular story will be the first, let's call it traumatic event of 2020. So I've got a pretty big yard. We're in Kansas, and I have Bermuda. So Bermuda will go dormant sooner and look yellow. Some people hate that. And it goes green a little later. So the neighbors were already getting a little green, but it's Bermuda, and the neighbor beside me is Bermuda. And I've got a big farm field behind the house, so it feels nice, open and airy. Luckily, there was some green kind of, I don't know what was growing in there, but I had a fire going and I was burning off some refuse. A wind gust came up, caught my yard on fire. And Kansas wind isn't gentle or subtle, and real quickly, I no longer had control of fire, which can bring a bit of panic. And I didn't have a hose prepped or ready. I had nothing ready. Luckily, a neighbor came running over. I'm going to throw a photo up here of what the after effects look like in my yard. You can see it looks like charcoal, or I like to say maybe it's like burnt peat moss. A neighbor luckily saw it, ran over with his hose connected and started working. It turned out when the fire hit his somewhat green fescue, it stopped anyway. When it hit the field, it stopped, because I thought I was going to end up burning a quarter section. And then I got my hose up and working, thanks to the help of the family, and kept my neighbor's Bermuda from burning. And then a fireman that lives in the neighborhood came over and said, "Hey, this is actually good for your grass." It's good. Kind of like peat is good. Now, I have no idea what this is, so we'll come back. Oh, wow. What is that? That had a very fruity nose to it. It was a mild, like a 40 or maybe a max 43% ABV. Huh. Is that an Oloroso barrel with some kind of scotch? Or I've been tricked by some brandies before, which can throw you for a loop. Huh. And there's even some American single malts now that'll get me. This almost feels like an American single malt that has had some kind of sherry cask finish. But that's just the nose. Woo! Holy moly! The alcohol sting is huge. That's no 40 proof. I took a big old swig. Man, I'm still getting touches of cherry. A little bit of kitchen spice. Let me hide this off to the side. There's some white label on there. I don't want to see it. I'm going to have to put some water in that bad boy. Wow, that flashed my palate right from the start. Kind of like the yard catching on fire. Yeah, kind of like that. Let's come back to the whiskey. See what else I can get here. Wow, you know what? I'm going to put a couple more. That one really overtook the palate. I did not expect that. I thought it was going to be a much lighter ABV. I'd say the ABV was at least 50 now, maybe even higher. I don't know what happened there. So the nose, I still get like a sweet candied sugar along with a cherry kind of fruit. There's something else. What is that? Oh, a lot of cherry in there. So let's see. All right, didn't flash as much. You know, I'm going to grab it in a second here because I can't really pin this one down. I would still lean that maybe this is an American single malt. I don't get some of the, Well, I'm not picking up a lot of that malted barley, though. And then it leans right back in toward these sugars. Touch of cotton candy, strawberry maybe. Wow, a little perplexed. A lot of verbiage on here. Let's see, what is this? Joseph Magnus Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Wow. Glad I came back to the States at least. Bottled for 5280 Whiskey Society and Davidson's Liquors. Volume 2. Nancy the Nose, that's Nancy Fraley, she's awesome. Nancy Knows Best looks like what they called it. Okay, that's interesting. So it's Nose, N-O-S-E, Nancy Knows Best. That's a nice play on words. Wow, 12 years, 9 months, 49.7. Glad I came up to the 50 ABV. This is a single cask. This in particular is bottle 26 of 60, and it's a whiskey dong. I know the dong. So we met in Denver. Isn't that something? And you have great, Dawn, you have great handwriting. I could never write that much on this bottle, and you did it so clearly. So, wow, Nancy, you threw me for a loop. Joseph Magnus is phenomenal. You'll see them over here. I really love what they're doing with Joseph Magnus. And this, of course, is going to be extremely rare, bottled for the 5280 Whiskey Society and Davidson's Liquors, Volume 2, Nancy Knows Best. 12 years, 9 months. Wow. So, let me try one more. Well, I can see why I was confused here. That first flash, you can definitely get a little bit of those bourbon corn notes. Of course, after you see the title, it seems so much clearer. Gosh, and now I feel like I can get the corn in the finish. But you saw what I could and couldn't do before I read. But there you go. Joseph Magnus does great stuff. If you see any, pick it up. It's usually worth your time, especially these rare bottles. Whiskey Dong has bottle 26 of 60. So the grass, you've seen the photo, maybe it's popping back up right now, came back awesome. My fireman neighbor was right. I basically burned off. He'd recently been saying, hey, you're going to want to cut that down really close because the thatch can start to mess with it. He said, and I remember he told me like a couple years ago, if you ever want to burn it, that's a good way to go. So I burned it involuntarily, and boy, did it come back nice. So I kept joking around with the neighbors. I may do a controlled burn next time. My fellow neighbor with the Bermuda as well, he's an engineer. He'll probably want to be out there with his hoses ready. Not a lot of trust for yours truly, I think. Especially after seeing my, the panic with the fire. Yeah, I think my son came and said, Dad, really disappointed. You lost control of fire. Thanks, son. You know, you're not too far off the old block yourself. So, the beginning of 2020, I usually say trouble comes in threes. Trouble came in fours, I believe, for 2020. But we'll get into that. There'll be a car wreck. There'll be a pandemic. Who knows about that? Who knows? There'll be a riot. Then there'll be the actual catching of the COVID by both Scott and I. And then hopefully the year's over, but it's not quite over yet. So fingers triple crossed, quadruple crossed, that's it. But the fire was definitely not the worst event for 2020, as we all know. Scotch it, you Scotch gods. Cilantro, dummies.